Oh, that's so weird. Okay. So I'm watching myself on my other screen up there. Slight delay. It's freaking me out. I just want to say, first off, we got like a minute before official airtime, but this is my absolute scariest thing that I've ever done. Something that I promised myself I would never do was be on YouTube, and then here I am. So we're gonna rock it. We had questions yesterday about parallel universes, which I know a little bit about. We had, she's too good for the bed. Questions about conlangs, which I am definitely qualified to answer. And then, of course, if anybody else knows answers to questions, please throw them in the comments. And I want this to be more of a discussion than me lecturing, because I lectured for many years, and I'm not prepared to lecture today. So I'm going to wait for a few more people to get in here, specifically the people that ask those questions. As far as how ink comes out of pens, as far as I know, it's gravity and capillary action. So the ink holds itself together as it gets pulled down. That's why sometimes you'll see like little blobs that get stuck, because they're held together more by the force that holds them together is greater than the force of gravity for that little ball. But otherwise, the gravity just pulls it down, and the little ball in the ballpoint pen pulls it out as you move it along the paper. Yeah, okay, we got people here now. Yeah, it is. It's kind of neat. It's the same action that makes plants able to take up water and do other stuff, which I know I have some botanists here watching, whether or not they'll admit it, that will speak to that further if they wanted to. Hey, so parallel universes, Logan, is that what you wanted to ask about? Because I don't know a ton, but I do know some stuff. And I know about Schrodinger's cat and the misconceptions versus what it's really meant to be. Okay, so Erwin Schrödinger was a physicist, and everyone thinks that the cat thing was some kind of real experiment or could really happen. What he was trying to illustrate is that what we know about quantum physics just does not work when we like put it into the regular physics world. And there's such a disconnect there that he was trying to illustrate a way that in an experiment that just could not work. So the experiment goes like this. You put a cat in a box, and there's a vial in there with some kind of radioactive isotope that has a chance, a quantum probability of breaking somehow and killing the cat. And because at the quantum level, that's both happening and not happening, logically, through a course of like cause and effect, if that's happening at the quantum level, that thing has to both break and not break, and therefore kill and not kill the cat, which is impossible. And he knew that. And that's what he's trying to illustrate, is it's just not possible. And so there's something about physics that we don't understand that's going on in between. And that's what physicists are still looking for, the overlying theory, or the grand, forget what they call it. But so the cat lives. Yeah, well, ideally you don't do this. But so the idea of opening the box to see if the cat lives or not is based on the idea that you'll never know at the quantum level what's going on until you measure it. Because, God, this is so hard to do on the fly. Because if you measure where something is at the quantum level, you can't measure how fast it's going. And if you measure how fast it's going, you can't measure where. So it's more of the action of checking it is when it happens. Otherwise, it's just in this constant like cloudy state of all superpositions at the same time. Ideally, yeah. So I hope that made sense. It's not exactly like entry-level physics, but it's the best I can do about Schrodinger's cat. Now, regarding parallel universes, I do know that a lot of people think that string theory, as interpreted by one interpretation is the Copenhagen theory, and that says somehow that we have infinite universes and every possible thing is happening in some universe or another. And that's not exactly true. I think it does still mean that there are infinite universes, but infinite is a weird thing in and of itself. What it means, though, is that not every single thing is possible. So there's not a universe where I'm doing this live stream and all of a sudden I become John Bon Jovi, because there's not one tiny thing, one parameter that you could change to flip on to make this universe split into that one. So it has to be, you have to think of sort of like a binary system where everything that you could turn off or on has an off or on, and there's no Caroline to John Bon Jovi switch. There is, let's say maybe there's a heart cell in my body that could shut down, and so that's like a yes or no. We have to think even smaller than that, like quantum level, but and so that has a cascading effect where I will just like collapse and die during this video, maybe. Yeah, it's like a binary. So it's a binary process. Like anything that can be a yes or no at the quantum level is a yes or no at the quantum level. But you have to, in order to get that grand outcome of like Hitler still being alive or something, all of those things had to have been flipped on. I hope that makes sense. That's a little hard to explain. Science is hard, man. Okay. What else we got? Conlangs. Is Nathan here? Nathan. Okay, somebody gets it. Cool. Yeah, so in every parallel universe except this one, they all have evil goatees. That is true. Who are you, Choco Taco? Grand unifying theory. Thank you, Mom. That's exactly what I meant to say. So the grand unifying theory is what, hey, Kelsey, is what they're trying to find still to connect the quantum universe with the physical universe that we can actually see, the cat either being alive or dead. That's the grand unifying theory. They thought string theory was that for a while. Now they think that might be, they don't think it's the holographic universe principle, but that's certainly helpful in a mathematical sense. But that's way, way beyond what I can explain. Refresh, Amanda, refresh. Einstein got a lot of stuff right. Who are you to say that, Mom? But, you know, fun fact, Dana Scully, the FBI agent, did rewrite Einstein for her thesis back in '92, so he got some things wrong. But Nathan's not here yet, right? So I was going to talk about conlangs for a little bit, and I don't know specifically what you guys want to ask about conlangs. What else? Does anybody want to talk about, Michael and I were talking about the universal translator the other day. And cool. Thank you, Amanda. You're back. The universal translator, I think Amanda might have some fun things to say about this too, but here's my idea on the universal translator. So the way I assume it works, okay, for any of you who don't watch Star Trek, the universal translator is this sort of Deus ex machina device to explain away why all the aliens speak all the same language. It's this machine that the Federation has that just interprets every other language as English or what we're seeing on TV. The problem comes up in a couple of different ways. As a linguist, you kind of cringe. What is Star Trek, Michael? So first off, if like Lieutenant Worf is saying something in English and then he goes, you know, I'm gonna grab my baklif, that's a Klingon word that didn't get translated. So how do you explain that? And I always assumed, and Amanda, you might want to maybe give me your opinion as well, but I always assumed that that was the universal translator picks up on intent and not just words themselves. Sorry, Logan. Also, another one of my favorite things about Star Trek is when the universal translator can't figure out a language, like how hard is it to, how different does a language have to be for it not to be able to be parsed by the universal translator? And then a famous episode of Next Gen is when Picard is alone on this planet and this guy's speaking only in metaphors. Yeah, you get brain italics, right? So it's like for a second there, your brain just stops and says, no, this is in native language. I'm going to speak this in my native language. But then how do you explain something like this where a Klingon might say, yes, I want to go into, what's the word for it? Blah, 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 blah. Like, if you don't know the word for it, you're speaking Klingon to begin with. How do you not, you know what I mean? How do you not know your own language's word for it and just let the translator get it? But aside, if you like that kind of stuff, Star Trek Enterprise has a character called Hoshi Sato, who is a linguist, and she actually helps develop the universal translator. So they talk a little bit more about it because the translator doesn't work nearly as well because that's like back in the day. Yeah, that's a great point. So there are a lot of words that just don't have direct translations. And that kind of goes back to you needing some kind of intent when you're translating. And in fact, people go to school to be translators. They don't just learn, oh, you should watch it. You should watch it. Absolutely. It's really great from a linguistic point of view, for sure. Also from a lesbian point of view, they're those girls. Anyway, so there are people that go to school just to be translators. So not only do you need to know the language, but you need to know how to do it fast, and you need to understand intent and some of the subtleties involved with translation. And so there are things like, to Logan's point, not having words for some ideas in English. I specifically in undergrad did work on color words, so I know those pretty well. And there are just some languages that don't have words for, yeah, it's freaking hard. There's some words that, some languages that don't have words for many colors at all. There are some languages that only have words for 2 colors, and if they do, it's white and black, always. And if they add a 3rd color, if there's a language with 3 colors, it's white, black, and red, always, guaranteed. There's this work by, wait a second. Boop, boop, boop. Back in the 50s, these guys, Berlin and Kay, this is their original work. They ran through as many languages as they could get their hands on, went to a bunch of native speakers and said, like, where on this chart does your color for red start and stop? And green, where does that start and stop? And they mapped them out for a bunch of languages, and this book has all those maps. So like Swahili, these are the colors, and then you would correspond it to the color print page. And so what they found was an order at which languages pick up colors. So it would be black and white, and then if you have a 3rd one, it would be red. If you had a 4th one, I think it's green or blue, and the 5th one would be the other one that you didn't pick up. So there's an order to it. And I don't know how many people speak Russian besides Amanda, but there's Russian actually splits. Yeah, exactly. And I'll scan that for you if you want. But Amanda, does Russian split blue into light blue and dark blue, and you just all have an overall blue color, right? I can't remember. Yeah, so that was my undergrad research, was doing some data science and figuring out why it does that. And yeah, cool. So it does, Russian does not have an overall blue color, just light blue and dark blue. But to Logan's point, there is June. June's licking her butthole, so that's, I'm sure, I hope the microphone's not picking that up. The order it picks up those colors is based on their significance in the brain and the significance in culture. So why you would need to distinguish at all, because those colors that you don't have words for, you can still describe, right? Because we can still describe light blue, you just need the word light before it. You can describe yellow orange, you just have to merge two words together. So in a language that only has black and white, you could describe gray as saying black, white. You could describe blue as saying sea color. You know, we do that all the time with more complex colors than I think the 10 that we have. Black, white, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Yeah. Everything else is sort of not a core color and is sort of a variation on that color. And I could talk about color stuff forever, but I don't. Yeah, burnt cerulean, like that cerulean is definitely not a core color. And I don't know how exactly to define core color, but there's something about the prototypicalness of the color. So what I mean by prototype is semantic. Yeah, but Kate, indigo for some reason is not really considered one of those core colors. And I guess, I mean, right off the bat, I don't know what indigo looks like. It's purple. It's light purple. It's dark blue. What's indigo? I don't know. Hey, come on over here. Thank you. Very good. It's June. Anybody that doesn't know my dog, June? This is my baby. Hey, bud. Yeah, so it's hard to distinguish. If I had like a rainbow in front of me, I could probably point out where indigo begins and ends, but it's not a core color. It's just not. It's part of the rainbow because it's part of the electromagnetic spectrum, but as far as semantics and as far as colors, it's like color words, it's not. Okay, but semantic prototypes. I know a bunch of you have probably been accosted by me. I've asked this question to you, but if I say, picture a chair. Picture a chair, have a chair in your mind. Okay. Does that chair have a back to it? Answer in the comments. Chair have a back? Yeah. Most people will say yes. Okay. Does it have armrests? Chair have armrests? No. I agree. Does the chair have 4 legs? What if I take one of those legs away? Is it still a chair? At what point can I start adding things and taking away things before it's no longer a chair? There are 4 legs, but could there be 3 legs and it still be a chair? Could it be backless and still be a chair? Or is that at the point at which it becomes a bar stool? You know? So there is no answer, obviously. But what I'm getting at is the chair that you had initially in your brain as the chair is your prototype, is your prototypical chair. That's the one that you sort of identify as like where you store it in your head as chair, and then everything else is a variation on that. Ashley, yeah, you got this. Hold on. Stick with me. So if you picture your ideal red, like the reddest red, you can move a little to orange and a little to purple, and it's still red before it gets to full out orange or purple. And so there's one particular shade of red that's your prototypical red, and then everything else is a variation on that. And what they found, Berlin and Kay, is that different languages, not only did they split up all the color space in different ways, and in different numbers, so some would have 8 colors and some would have 7 colors, but Swahili speakers, for instance, would have their prototypical red as darker, for instance, I don't know exactly, but maybe darker than an English speaker's red. This is especially common for languages that don't have words for the weirder colors like pink or orange. Oh my God, Michael. But yeah, back as a core component of chairs. So a stool is not a chair at all? You don't think, is a stool not a sub-unit of a chair? Because we could agree that they're both furniture, right? So are they both not chairs? Or is a stool a kind of chair? A stool is a chair, yes, I agree. Anyway, so that's semantics. My semantics teacher was very mean to me, so I don't remember a lot of semantics, but that's the stuff I do remember. So if I sit on a bed, is it also a chair? That's a great question. Hold on.
Very good question.
Thank you. So it comes down to if you define something by its function or by its physicality. And that's another part of semantics. I don't know too much about that stuff, but I can definitely tell you that, you know, function does play a part in things. Function does play a part in defining things for sure, but so does appearance, so does origin sometimes, and things like that. So I could go on and on about specifically in my conlang. I can give you some examples, but those are all fake because I made them up. So I don't know if, whatever. But is a hot dog a sandwich? Yeah, this comes down to that very crucial question that everybody asks themselves. Is a hot dog a sandwich? And it comes down to how you think about semantics. Do you define things by their use or by their appearance or by their origin or whatever? Everything is a chair if you're persistent. And that's what it comes down to, is that all concepts and ideas are just one thing, and then you just divide them up into different things as you need them. That's way, way, way abstract. Yeah, wouldn't a chair and a stool both be a subset of a seat? We're getting into some really like pedantic stuff, but yeah, you could say something like that. So just to give you some made up bullshit that I just, made up in my conlang. I have 3 conlangs, if you didn't know that. So constructed languages. The first one was when I was in high school. It's terrible. The second one was when I was in grad school. That got a little better. And then when I was in my master's linguistics. And then the third one I've been working on since then. And so it's a lot more complex. And in that third one, there are, I think, 7 words for to be. And one of them is to be a subset of. So you would say that kind of to be for a chair is furniture. A chair is a subset of furniture. You couldn't just say a chair is equal to furniture. That's a different verb. But yeah, so there's the copula verbs, or the be verbs. I think there's 7. There's subset, superset, equality. I can't remember the rest, and I don't want to pull up the Excel sheet, but there's a couple. In my first conlang, I split up little dog and big dog. So there was no word for dog, just dog. You had to say either specifically little dog or big dog. And if you described like a Great Dane as a little dog, that would be invalid. It would be like saying it's a cat. It wouldn't work. But it made for some fun insults when you described people as little dogs. And that was also a matriarchal society. So I did a lot of, yes, okay, so what about medium dogs? And then, yeah, I always wondered about that. And I would say that you would just say little dog, big dog, or big little dog, or little big dog, or something like that, which is just what we have to do with orange, red, right? Red, orange, orange, red. We're very adaptive. We're a very adaptive species, and our language reflects that. And so we can just say whatever we want with words. It's just sometimes we don't have the exact word for the concept. We have to kind of get around it. So any other conlang questions? Or do we want to go back to like regular science stuff that I don't know that I can bullshit? Yeah, go ahead. Bryant, go ahead. Yeah, Kate, that's like super fascinating. Like where languages just arbitrarily decide to boop, boop, boop. Yeah. Amanda might be able to answer that question. Amanda's going to be our resident speaker of all the languages. So you know how when you listen to a Japanese person talk, it sounds super fast. Is that what we sound like to them? From what I understand, and this is going to be covered on my my first video. I've got a little preview out on this channel, but it'll be covered in length at the full video. You sound like that and really mushy. I know that there are some languages that just have a slower rate to them because of the syllable complexity to them. And then some languages are just naturally spoken slower as well. But Amanda says we sound like that and really mushy. What do you mean by mushy? And do Japanese speakers sound mushy to us? Yeah, Mom, I got you on that one. Mushy, mushy. Not mushy, mushy, mushy. Yes, it is more timed. We're getting into some stuff that I haven't heard in a long time. Yeah. Oh, okay, okay. So I think what she's trying to say, or okay, what she's saying in real words that I need to now explain to non-linguists is Japanese has a very specific syllable timing system to it. So it's so like watashi wa no doko desu ne, like it's very ba. And so that's what mora timed is kind of referring to without getting too technical. It's mora is, you know how syllables are a subset of a word? A word can be broken up into syllables. Well, there's something between that called a foot. Yeah, a tempo of syllables. And the way the feet can have stress reflects on the mora, I think. So it's like, if it's a mora timed language, it's got a very like specific tempo to it. And that's why when we listen to Japanese, it's sort of percussive. Yeah, I think that might be the best way I can explain it. Amanda, if you have anything else to add that I haven't gone over, it's been a while since I've talked about moras. This book is the Art of Language Invention. I have a bunch of conlang books, but this one is by David Peterson, who did Dothraki and all the languages for Game of Thrones. And I actually have an essay critiquing Dothraki noun structure, clause structure, and it's on his website. He let me put it on his website. But he goes over that a little bit here in terms of sounds and syllables. But I don't want to like look for it too much. My mom asked a good question a couple minutes ago on syllables equal footnotes, rests. Yeah, I think that's pretty. Yeah, yeah. I'll put the link to that essay up in the comments or in the description after I post this video. My mom had a good question about there are some Australian Aboriginal languages that instead of using a relative directional system, so instead of saying like that's to my left or to my right, they will say that's to the east of me. No, they'll say that's to the east. It's not relative to any particular person. So that in itself is super weird because I don't know where north is right now. The river's that way, so that's got to be west. But I had to think about it. Whereas left, right, I already know that. So Logan, I think you need to let it go. Or am I just seeing this live chat really far back? I don't know. Yeah, I'm just seeing Logan's comments just stuck here on my main screen. But so these people that grow up speaking this Aboriginal language natively, where they don't have left or right, they just have east and west. Just like I know left and right off the top of my head, they know their cardinal directions without having to think about it. Which means that when they go back and try to describe something, like they know where everything was at the time. Like they know, you pull up a memory of like, I was in a schoolhouse back in 1992 and to the west was blank. And it means also that they're really good navigators, I think, which throws into question the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. So Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is this idea that the language you speak determines the way you see the world, and most linguists, I think, nowadays disagree with that, and I disagree with it for the most part. Soft Sapir-Whorf is bad. Yeah, so there's a little bit of that, but it's not super strict. It's not going to change your entire life if you grow up speaking one language or the other. It doesn't change the way your brain parses things, for instance. But it might influence you to see if you maybe speak a gendered language, which that I can definitely talk about. If you speak a gendered language that refers to bridges as feminine and boats as masculine, you might think of boats as more manly than an English speaker, who English, for some reason, is like the only thing we call, the only abstract thing we call feminine pronouns is a boat. So we like, she's off and you know, she's a grand old boat and all that. We always refer to boats as feminine, and some languages that refer to them as masculine, maybe they would view them with a little bit more of a masculine trait. And so that would be a soft Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, just sort of that's kind of light application of language influencing the way you see the world. And cars, yeah, pretty much vehicles in general. I'm sure that when we get warp space drives, yeah, because in Star Trek they do say she, they refer to the thing as she. Now that you're thinking about it, Ryan, what? Yeah, so if you could think of some other objects, I would love to think about it, because I'm sure they're all connected. As Amanda says, it probably has something to do, motherland is different, and I can get to that. But it probably has something to do with men and their obsession with status, and I'm not trying to call out men in general, but typically there's this idea in language that the neutral is masculine. So for example, in Spanish, if you wanted to say they, and it's a group of men and women, it defaults to the masculine. So you say ellos, which is either all boys or boys and girls, but you can't say ellas if there is a single boy in there. It just doesn't work. The neutral, like of both genders, is masculine. And so there's a lot of that preferential treatment in language. And I would assume that it's the same thing that's applying to like cars and boats and stuff, is that the men are the ones who are deciding that. Yeah, motherland, fatherland, homeland, all really interesting concepts. So fatherland in Germany is usually considered like the fatherland. They don't use motherland as much as we do in English. I know, I was so confident when you said that, and now I can't really think of why they do that. But it might come to me. I feel like I've read it before. Anybody know? Amanda? It might have something to do with how you view the land, if it's giving you resources, or if it's a place of worship, or if what kind of thing it holds in society. I don't know. There's a lot of socio stuff in linguistics, and there's a whole field called sociolinguistics for that. Another place that uses fatherland besides Germany. Another place that uses fatherland. I don't know, because Russia's motherland. I don't know. If anybody thinks of it, shout it out. So in my first conlang, I seeked Suk to do that. So Kelsey's question is, are there any matrilineal societies where that language trait is reversed and groups are inherently feminine? If we wanted to like look for that, thank you. What I just did there, where I couldn't remember the thing, that has a word too, and I can't remember it, but that's like when you can't remember the verb conjugation, so you default to like the standard. I need Aronoff's morphology book, but anyway. It's in my list of things to buy after the apocalypse. But yeah, in my first conlang, which is called Gvwtok, which means like Northlandish, it's the society of people run, the society is matrilineal, and there's, in the present day of the like world that I have it in, there are men currently fighting for their rights, just like women, more akin to women in the 60s than women now, but they, still fighting. And so there are, yeah, shout them out, Ryan, because can't think of any. There are no men holding office, for example, and all the children get their mother's name. No, I'm sorry, feminine children get their own name doubled. So like one of the characters, her name is Ipata, but her brother's name is like Gvwtok or something like that. So he doesn't get his doubled name. He has to inherit his mother's last name, something like that. And what happens is, it's kind of cool. There's a lot of, all the slang words are like female genitalia and stuff like that. That's like, it's sort of reversed from all the bad words that we have in English. And also culturally, like, it's okay to be, it's okay and sexualized to be a gay man, but not a lesbian. That's not okay, because you can't waste, it's like the exact opposite of our society and how we sexualize things here. Okay, Arabs, Albanians, Armenians, Austrians, Finns, Franks, Greeks, Iranians, Irish, Kazakhs, Nigerians, Pakistanis, so pretty much everybody. A lot of countries call their native land fatherland. And I would be curious to know the difference between those and then the motherland. Are we the exception, maybe? Yeah. Maybe we're the exception, motherland, because can't be the Statue of Liberty, because that was later. Then I assume motherland popped up, but anyway. So on the topic of, yeah, fatherland was an ancient Greek term. That could be true. And then they all came down, although a lot of those languages don't come from Greek. Motherland is a country that has had a lot of colonies. Fatherland is one's birth. Okay, so has had a lot of colonies or was made up of colonies, because the US hasn't had as many colonies. I wouldn't call them colonies, as it just was a colony and then took over a bunch of little lands. But yeah, we're getting out of my area of expertise, so I'm just going to be speculating at this point. But I did want to address something I do know, which is oh wait, Kelsey, did I answer your question? Yes, I think I tried at least. If you did want some natural examples, check out Native American, North Native American languages, where a lot of the societies were matrilineal, and you'll see a lot of that stuff. But there's this idea of gendered nouns, and even though we say they're gendered, that's sort of just like a label that we put on them. And a lot of languages have the same concept, but they don't have feminine, neuter, and masculine, like German, or feminine and masculine, like Spanish. They have things like animate and inanimate. Or like Swahili has, I think, 18 different noun classes, including, I don't know if this is Swahili, this is some Bantu language, I think, like poisonous nouns. So you have a different ending for nouns that are poisonous. Plant, things like that. They split them up. Yeah, French has feminine, masculine, the easy stuff. But the further away you get from Indo-European, the more towards the motherland of language, which is Africa, the more you're going to get the weirder stuff, which is a trait we see in general. And a lot of you biologists might know this from a biological point of view. And there's a lot of overlap, like language behaves the same way as the species a lot of times. But because language originated in Africa, there's a lot more variation in Africa that slowly got filtered out as we left Africa and went overseas. So all of the click consonants and stuff occur in Africa and nowhere else, as far as I know. Yeah, homeland everywhere except for Wikipedia. Yeah. A lot of click consonants, a lot of the weird classes. Yeah, so is there an equivalent for the out of Africa hypothesis for language? Like how it changed and traveled? And you would need to define that for me a little bit better, but as far as I know, just like we think that people sort of originated around Kenya and moved up, language pretty much evolved in the same place, and the most complex languages are there as far as some traits, not all traits, but specifically sounds, a lot of clicks and weird things, non-pulmonic consonants, which means that you're not using your lungs, so things like that. The way those get used, by the way, you might be able to like click for a horse, like, but if you just add an A to the end of it, you've made it into a consonant with a vowel. So oh, you know, stuff like that. That's how that works. It's just it takes a lot of practice to get the actual, like the click that you want to happen every time. And then there are also implosive. So instead of pushing air out of your mouth, you're pulling it into your lungs. So I can't do it right now. But those are other kinds of consonants that you'll find closer to the center of where we think language originated. And then the further out you get, yeah, those are super hard. Do people know how it evolved and how it got to be so different than when it started? Yeah, European languages and African languages are so different. Well, from a biological point of view, European languages were sort of the last to happen, right? So we moved out of Africa, we went to Europe, but we also went east, and then Aborigines went to Australia, and then we crossed over to North America, and South America happened pretty like early on, actually. So all of that happened before we got to, and then there were a lot of like Celtic languages and stuff that were native to Europe at the time before we started seeing Indo-European, the language family, which is like French, German, Spanish, Italian, even the Nordic languages, before those started to go up there. So those are sort of the last and more newer languages, and that's why they're so different from the stuff around them. There are some still really weird languages. Did Neanderthals have language? I don't think so. This book would know, but I haven't read it. So maybe I'll get back to you on it. I don't think so though. But within Europe, there are some isolates, some languages that we don't know where they came from. So like Basque in the Basque region of France and Spain is a completely weird, isolated language has no connection to any other language that we know of. There are, okay, so are there records of the languages themselves as they changed? So this is, yes, there is a phylogenetic tree of language. There, in fact, we even use some of the same techniques when we try to trace back ancestry. So yeah, Michael's going to be the one to know that research shows that Neanderthals may or may not have spoken languages, but they didn't have human languages. But yeah, to Kate's point, there are a lot of similar equations that we use to go back in time to rebuild ancestral languages the same way we would kind of find or rebuild a missing link between this person and like, let's say we have a squirrel and a chipmunk, and we can find how far, based on their DNA and the likeness, the sameness of their DNA and where it differs, we can find how far ago they split. You can do that with language. And that is Lyle Campbell's book, which is, obviously you can see here, I'm a big fan of this book. Lyle Campbell's Historical Linguistics. He's on his 3rd edition now. This is the 2nd. This is an awesome book, and this is where a lot of my videos are going to come from. So yeah, like linguistic systematics, that's pretty much it. Yeah, and a lot of the math they use may or may not be valid, but it's kind of how they rebuild languages from the past, our ancestral languages. So what game was it that had Proto-Indo-European? It was Far Cry Primal, right? And if you go back and look at some of the promotional material for that game, you can see the linguists talking about how they were able to reconstruct PIE, Proto-Indo-European, so that it could be spoken for the game. But the problem, Kate, is that there aren't exactly records, because if there were records, they would have to be auditory or have to be phonetic. They would have to be, yeah, Prometheus also used PIE or just some other rebuilt language. What was I saying? I'm not even, oh yeah, I meant to pour myself a shot here of Coke. All right. What was I saying? PIE and oh yeah, this is supposed to be everybody's drinking but me. Oh yeah, phonetic. Okay. So here's the thing. Language is not written language. Language is not how you write it. That kind of evidential information is only useful in certain instances, but we don't really, like linguists don't usually study the written word, except how it relates to the spoken word or to the mind. The exceptions are sometimes if you have a phonetic alphabet, but even then, anybody who knows Japanese knows that the phonetic alphabet is not always exactly phonetic. So the word wa, which denotes like the subject of a sentence, roughly, I'm not going to get into that today, is actually ha, like the letter ha, but it's pronounced wa. And there are a couple other of those, like wo is o, only in certain situations. So it's not completely phonetic, and therefore it's not what they're actually saying. So it's not a direct representation of language. And obviously with English, written English doesn't sound anything, it's not consistent. So for that reason alone, there can be no records of languages themselves as they moved, except the coolest thing is it's the subtext. So if you look back at Shakespeare, the way they can reconstruct Shakespeare as it was supposed to be spoken was by finding things he intended to rhyme that we no longer rhyme. So a lot of Shakespeare has puns and rhymes and really cool linguistic features that are missed now because we speak with like a modern British accent instead of a Shakespearean British accent. But there's a video on YouTube of, I think, Patrick Stewart going back and using the original Shakespearean accent, and it sounds bizarre. So in that case, there can be records like that where they're playing like language games and it's written down, and we can sort of figure it out that way. What the fuck is up with Welsh? Yeah, so Welsh is another one of those isolates. It's not completely isolated like Basque is. Welsh is Amanda, is it's Welsh and Celtic, Irish Celtic, Scottish Celtic, all of those. There's a little family of Celtic languages. They were all native to England before England got taken over. Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic. Yeah, there's a bunch of different words for stuff, and I don't know at what point Gaelic means just Irish Gaelic or just Scottish Gaelic, or if they're all Gaelic. There's one on the mainland called Breton, which you may have heard of from like the Skyrim people, the Bretons, and they are at the north of France, and that is an ethnic group that speaks one of those languages. That's the only one on the main continent, I think. They're all a part of whatever family that is, whether it's called Gaelic or whatever. And it's a little, yeah, it might be one that just depends on where you're at, what you're going to call it. So if you're in Ireland, Irish is Irish and Gaelic is Scottish. But if you're in Scotland and you say Gaelic, it means Irish Gaelic, maybe. All relative terms for things, which is, if you know anything about binomial nomenclature, you know that a lot of animals are called different things depending on where they are. So I can't think of a single one right now. I know an alligator pear is what like people south of us will call an avocado. Yeah. So, and that's why we need, yeah, and plants. Yes, thank you. So like an alligator pear and an avocado are the same thing, or what's coriander and cilantro? Yeah. But the reason that my hero, Carolus Linnaeus of Sweden, he's on their money because he's so important to biology. The reason that he decided back a couple hundred years ago to give everything a scientific name was because there's so many things that we get confused if we don't have an exact scientific name. There is an equivalent in language. It's called the ISO index or something like that. It's ISO, and then it has a number. And so every language has a tag. So it doesn't matter what you like call it. Mexican parsley is also cilantro. Yeah, I've heard that. It doesn't matter what you call the language, whether you call it Swahili, or if you call it, the Bantu interlingual, whatever. That language has an ISO index that you can like refer to specifically, so everyone can know exactly what you're talking about, just like a binomial name. I'm getting into herb talk here. A culantro? Did you mean to have the U? Huh. I would be curious to know what that is. I feel kind of bad not just looking stuff up, but I don't want to like have a video of me looking stuff up. But culantro, coriander, yeah, coriander is the seed sometimes, and then in other places it's the full-on plant. But anyway, any other questions? We're narrowing. Yeah. Brits say coriander for the leaves too. That's what I thought. Yeah, they don't have cilantro over there at all, like the word, as far as I know. Okay, it might be similar to how if I say alligator, I mean American alligator. Where else do alligators exist? If I say crocodile, I probably don't mean American crocodile, which is a very rare subspecies or species of crocodile. It probably means saltwater and Nile crocodile, something like that. So yeah. If you say Bantu language, that's a whole family of languages, but sometimes people are referring to a specific language. A Chinese crocodile? What are you talking about? There's a gharial. China, lower China has a saltwater, I think. Anyway. And I see now you just left and went to go play Planet Coaster. So goodbye. Yeah, I think there's a Chinese alligator. Any other questions? And also just general opinions. Was this fun? Should I have topics ahead of time? How often should we do this? Because I had a blast, even though I didn't know what the hell I was talking about half the time. And I would also love for other people to be on camera with me. But, you know, not with me because quarantine. Because some of us has breathing issues. So, yeah, I liked it. I think we should do it once a week. I think we should do it when I've got some people that, yeah, you might, that can't make 2 o'clock because they are working. They're essential workers, and God bless them. But cool. And I didn't see Nathan here at all today, but I hope he gets to watch the feed, and I hope I answered some of his questions. And yeah. And Logan, you're just dead wrong about chairs. I'm sorry, man. I can think of some more linguistic stuff. I can think of some more biological stuff. Everything else is sort of just me shooting in the dark. And even the biology stuff, you get into genetics or botany, and I'm just like, whoop. Yeah. Ah, I got your back. Backless chairs. Hey, where are you now? Are you in Britain, Kelsey? Or have you Brexited, or what's going on? Oh, Vancouver. Yeah, I've got a couple people over on the. No, Michael, no politics. You are welcome to do that on my channel, but not in the science hour. I've got a couple of people in California, so. And I didn't see Sam, but I hope she was watching in Colorado. Anyway, I'm about to sign off. I love you guys. Thank you. This was a ton of fun. And I'll see you next time, whenever it is. So, bye.